You're going to learn the most satisfying way to end a speech or presentation. Great movies do this, great comedians do this, and professional speakers do this. Generally speaking, a public speaking conclusion has 4 parts, and we're going to focus on the last 2 parts of your conclusion because those are the parts that have a lasting impact. Here's the basic setup for a conclusion. We'll go through the first 2 parts pretty quickly. First, you signal the end. In conclusion, in summary. You can use whatever expression you like. There's nothing special about the specific wording, but it prepares your listeners for the end and cues them to pay attention so they don't miss anything important. Second, you concisely recap the key idea. This can be a 1-sentence synthesis of your whole message. What bottom line takeaway do you want your listeners to remember? Make it concise, make it pop. To me, the first 2 elements are 100% required and the rest of the conclusion won't work as well without them. But it's the third and the fourth part that will give your ending more impact. Third, you give your call to action or CTA. Most presentations have a very weak or blurry call to action. Your call to action is where you ask or invite your listeners to take whatever next step is a natural extension of your presentation. The key is to decide in advance what action you want your listeners to take at the end and make sure the rest of the presentation leads to that as the next logical step for them. What is the first step or action they should take after hearing your message? For example, if your presentation is teaching listeners about financial planning, your call to action could be to download a free copy of your budget building software. If your presentation is about the importance of exercise, then your call to action could be to get them to commit to going for 3 walks per week. If you're doing a business-to-business type presentation, your call to action could be to sign up for a free consultation call with you. The key is to make sure your call to action is a logical, clear, and easy first step to take. This will help you end with more impact because listeners will be doing something with your message. They're not just thinking about what you said, they're taking concrete action. And you'd leave that information up on the slide at the end as a reminder, and they can refer to it as you bring it all to a close because you're not done yet. The fourth and final step to end with impact is to finish with what some people call a clincher. This is where you end on a high note. It's the very last thing you say, so it has to be strong and memorable. The very best way to end on a high note is to echo your opening. We call the first part of your speech an opening or attention grabber or hook. This echo at the end is what professional speakers do. Stand-up comedians label this a callback. They take a joke from earlier in their routine and they bring it back around at the end. Some movies do this. They end almost the same way they started. To make this more concrete, if you open your presentation with a killer story, in your clincher, you tell us the outcome of that story. If you opened with a great quotation, revisit that quotation or share another related quotation from the same author for your clincher. If you open with some thoughtful questions to draw your listeners in, bring those questions back around at the very end. They will land differently now that we've heard your entire presentation. This echo is incredibly satisfying to listeners because it shows them that you as a speaker knew where you were going all along. It creates a package for the rest of the message. There's a great quotation from the movie The Emperor's Club. The end depends upon the beginning. That's the secret to ending with impact. The stronger your opening is, the more it sets you up for a strong ending. In contrast, if you have a weak opening, then you won't have as much to work with to create your ending, your clincher. In terms of fine-tuning tips, as you're preparing your presentation, put your best story, your best quotation, statistics, or questions in your opening. If it stands out to you as you prepare and research for your presentation, that's a good indication that it'll stand out to your listeners. And I have another video on the 5 best ways to start a speech. I'll put a link to that in the description below this one when that one's complete. Lastly, be sure to practice your ending a few extra times. That way your ending is crisp and one of the strongest parts of your presentation. That helps you end with confidence. With a few extra repetitions of practice, you can find ways to strengthen both the content and the delivery of that clincher. I almost never memorize anything word for word in my presentations, but I know what I'm going to say for that last sentence, so it lands exactly the way I want it to. Now, the unfortunate truth is that most speakers I know don't leave themselves enough time to practice their speeches, even a few extra times. And even fewer speakers know how to end with a bang. But that's the good news for you. You can separate yourself from the rest of the pack with a little extra planning and a few extra practice repetitions of your closing. Be sure to download my free PDF of the 7 instant tips to make you a more confident speaker. I'll put a link to that in the description below the video, as well as a link to the top 5 ways to start a speech. Until next time, thanks, God bless, and I will see you soon.